There's
Well, we're here.
all right, good morning. Everybody have a good weekend?
Yeah.
We get next Monday off. Sad, but exciting. We get next Monday. Right? Next Monday. So, probably should have checked before I told you that. Yes, next Monday, Labor Day. We get Labor Day. Going. with chapter 2, I have a. And I hope you find those. They are. But what we'll do is we'll build on this. We kind of left off here. So I'm just going to go back for just 1 second. Right. So we talked about a few different models, right? That there's a biological model looking at like medical, physical causes, and therefore medical and physical treatments, right? That's one perspective we can look at. We talked about Freud's model, the unconscious mind, early childhood, sexuality, aggressive urges, and all of that, looking at a kind of long-winded transference and free association. The behavioral model, conditioning and learning. We added the, where did it go? The cognitive model to it, looking at thinking patterns. And then you can combine those to get the cognitive behavioral model, which is a very current, popular model at the moment. And then we left off here. Right. And I wrote up on the board that the humanistic and existentialist model look a lot at like meaning in life and fulfilling your potential and goodness and growth and some of those things. Right. But what we'll do is I want to talk about these 3 different types of therapy that can fall under the humanistic existentialist model. These are very common types of therapy, especially the first one, client-centered therapy. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of a man named Carl Rogers. Very famous psychologist. If you haven't, you're going to see a video of him in a moment. But Rogers was really well known for developing what he called client-centered therapy. The client is at the center. The client is in charge. They're responsible for their own growth and their own progress. Rogers is a really interesting guy. He's like, again, one of the more well-known therapists. And I have a little video of him talking about how he approaches therapy. It's about 4 minutes or so. And we don't have videos of a lot of these people. So it's kind of cool that we have one of him. And so what you'll see is a few minutes of him talking about his approach to therapy. And then he's going to work with a woman named Gloria. And I mentioned this last time, Gloria volunteered to work with 3 different therapists. And you'll see 2 of them today. And I just want you to notice how different these approaches are. And we'll talk about it after, like if you had to pick one, which one would you rather do and why? But I want to show you this video of him first. And I'll write a couple of like words with his approach on the board. And then I'll show you him working with Gloria. And she gets frustrated with him. Rogers is a very non-directional guy. He doesn't believe in giving people advice or telling them what to do. And a lot of people, when they go to therapy, want someone to give them advice and tell them what to do. And so she gets a little mad at him, which is a little entertaining to watch. But let me bring this up here. So again, first is just him talking annoyed by that type of therapy. Like I saw some of you nodding, like a few of you. So let me turn this on so I can see you a little better. Any thoughts? Why would it annoy you? Like what would bother you about it? Yeah.
Some people, sometimes they are in their problem and they just don't know how to fix it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're for resolution. So then you don't get that, or it's like you kind of make it turn in circles.
Yeah.
You can start and like, come on, resolution.
Yeah, because she said that too, right? Like I want an answer, and that's not gonna happen, right? Like he's not gonna give it to you, right? And sometimes people do want that, want someone to be more like direct and give you advice, and you don't necessarily need to find yourself. You already know, you just want some help, right? So anybody else, why that would bother you, or any other, like some of you said you'd be annoyed? Yeah.
Well, beyond just like the qualities of his feedback, he was giving very little, where
Yeah.
it was pretty much entirely her going through a monologue, and then it's just like, I should.
All the therapeutic work, right? Yeah. He's doing something called echoing, right? The therapeutic technique that he created, where somebody talks for a matter of time and you echo back to them what they've said. So almost like a brief summary, right? Like, I hear you saying this, but like a clarifying question usually attached to it, right? Because what you do want is an answer, right? And then she responds to that. It's actually very difficult to do, but it seems like he's doing so little because he's giving her nothing, right? Just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, but you're completely in charge of like everything going on. Would anyone like that? Anyone sitting there going like, I would like that, I'm in control, like. Nobody in right? Very common, like this is a very typical approach to therapy, right? Where oftentimes the therapist will just kind of echo back. They listen, they're like in the moment and present with you, but they don't give you a lot of feedback or advice. He truly believed, right, that that person, I don't have it up here, but that person has like full responsibility for their own decisions and their own course. And for him to give you the answer would just be violating that process. But really interesting. And she said in the beginning, right, she's like, I'm a little nervous, right? Like she was all shaky. It's because she met with this guy that you're going to see next. Very, very different take. So the next one we're going to look at is a guy named Fritz Perls. And this is Gestalt Therapy, the second one up here. Gestalt means like whole or form or pattern. The Gestalt type therapists look at the current moment, the moment that you're in, a lot of like nonverbal stuff. They believe in kind of challenging things that are going on, any kind of discrepancies. He believed in skillfully frustrating his clients. And you'll see this, she gets mad at him. She gets like full on mad at him because he tries to frustrate her. He calls her out on every little thing that she does. And I'll leave it up to you. We could talk about it afterward. Like, which one do you think was more productive? Because she does get somewhere with him too, even though she doesn't talk at all about what she came in to talk about. Yeah.
I just think, as we move, I think what a brave woman.
Yeah.
Is.
Yeah.
Where that, because you can see how old this clips are.
Yeah, like 50s.
Where they said, we'd like to actually film you talking about your private things. And well, that's really a brave, incredibly courageous, brave woman to be that open.
Yeah.
And allow something. You know?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, right? I mean, think about how willing would you be to go in and meet with a therapist, have it recorded and shared with everyone for all time, right? I mean, she had some control over what she brings up, but still, yeah, it takes some guts to do that. Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you said that. So let me show you this other clip. And Fritz Perls, he's such a different guy. He has a very thick accent. He's smoking a cigarette, like totally different guy. You can already see that he's going to have a different approach. So I'll play you a little video of him talking about how he approaches therapy. I'll write some words up here, and then we'll watch him work with Gloria. Again, polar opposite, completely different take. All right. Okay. By him, right? He notices every little thing that she does, just a completely different take. But do you feel like they got somewhere? Like, I kind of feel like they started to get to some things that might be a little bit more meaningful. I mean, I don't know, any thoughts related to Pearls, like what that looks like? Would you want to go to that? Would you not want to go to that? It would be fun. Yeah, you would like that? Okay, I like that. Right? You're like, let's do it. Anybody else? Yes, no, like, what do you think? Just
Like it's
Okay.
like. Started thinking about like what my actual problems were and
Okay.
then I was like on back.
Yeah, like-
It'd be like a permanent resolution.
like you were not actually working on anything that was like meaningful as much as like the stuff that was coming up in the moment. Okay, right? Yeah.
I thought that the therapy would be effective because usually when somebody attacks your beliefs, become more defensive. And self-affirm that because somebody's attacking them, then that means that they're working defense. And then in your mind, they're become more attached to it. But it seemed like, by attacking her and what she was doing, opened it up for her to be maybe more vulnerable because she felt like, maybe there was no hiding from him.
Okay.
So there's no point in hiding anything, so this kind of way.
Yeah, let's put it out there, right? Like she's genuine and mad at him at the
Yeah.
end, you know?
But, over the course of the 5-minute conversation, he kind of broke down that,
that like facade that she had, that like superficial facade, right? Anybody else? Other thoughts? Yeah.
I feel like this would be like really contingently affected.
Okay.
Where, you know, what he was saying about how you are quite genuine when you get defensive about something. That's true, but also I feel like it would really interfere with the capability to speak with the patient about other issues where like
Sure.
they would have issues with compliance, and like then I feel like this would be hard for you to achieve something like transference where you know, they kind of just be like, oh fuck, I'm going to go and see this ass again.
Yeah. I'm gonna get yelled at today. I can feel it, right? Yeah, I could see it getting in the way of any kind of like deeper connection, right? I could see that. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's gonna be. You might have to lose off, but one is like, and then some experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if somebody had something, it'd be hard to feel, I would imagine it'd be hard to feel safe to like talk about something that was like deeper and maybe traumatic, or like to make that kind of progress. If somebody made you choose, you had to choose. There's no other option. You have to pick one or the other. How many of you would rather see Rogers, by show of hands? A few, some tentative hands there, right? How many of you would rather see Pearls? Ooh, look at, you want the conflict. I like that, right? Interesting. Okay, so we're kind of split. Thankfully, it's not just those two, right? There's a ton of other ways of approaching therapy, but these two are really, really common, right? There are people who are like Pearls, and there are people who are like Rogers, and there are people who use little bits of that, like very common. And when I was practicing as a therapist, I'd have moments where clients would do something like with their nonverbal cues, and I would call them out on it. I was never like, you're a phony. Like I was never that aggressive. I'm not an aggressive person. So I'd be like, it's like, I noticed that you just like, you're like doing this right now. Like you crossed your legs when you said that. Like really, it's interesting to notice those things. They're worth noticing. And it's very common in some of these perspectives to mirror your client. If your client crosses their arms, you should cross your arms. If they cross their legs, you cross their legs. If they sit up, you sit up. It's kind of like a perspective taking exercise of putting yourself in the same position as them. Like you don't want to be obvious and annoying about it, but you do want to like put yourself in their shoes. And so those are things that come out of these approaches, and not a lot of people are like purists with them, as we talked about last time. But I love that little series because I think it's so interesting to watch how these people work, right? And how they approach their type of therapy. This one's not nearly as common, but it is worth mentioning. Existential therapy is another branch here, where we look at ideas related to meaning in life and responsibility. A lot of like, what are the things that you hope to accomplish? What gives you meaning? And are you doing them? Right? And if you're not, how is that maybe affecting you in some way? Very common in this approach to do an exercise where you write your own obituary. If you were to die tomorrow, what would it say? And what's missing? And how might that change the way you approach your time from here on out? Right, a really daunting thing to do. I've done this before as part of like, both as a student and as an instructor. You know, if you were to die tomorrow, what do you wish was in there that wasn't? And how might that shape the way you then approach, you know, what you're doing on a daily basis? So all of these together are part of this like existential humanistic model, very positive, a lot of spirituality, a lot of different things going on, but very common types of therapy that people tend to use. There's one more like very common model, and then there's one that kind of combines them all at the end. So the socio-cultural model looks at like cultural forces and societal forces. Did you leave something from before?
Okay.
I haven't seen it, but if I see them, I'll grab them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the socio-cultural model. So we look at society, culture, more than one person. Forgot the then, more than one person. So this looks at the influence of other people, right? How do other people influence you? We don't live in isolation. We're constantly interacting with other people. This looks at things like norms, right? And culture and different groups that we might belong to. And so from this perspective, we look at abnormal behavior in the context of like society and culture, sometimes called the multicultural perspective. But how do the things that we're maybe supposed to accomplish or other people influence us? Have you ever had a moment, you don't have to admit this, but I'm sure many of you have had a moment where you compare yourself to other people. We do it all the time as people. It's a very common thing to do. This relationship, they look so happy. How come we're not like that? Right? These other people the same age as me are graduating from college and I just started, right? And then maybe that shapes the way that you feel about your self-esteem and the way that you view yourself. Comparing to others and then looking at norms and culture and so on. So from this perspective, we look at how other people influence us and how the relationships in our life might also play a role in our mental illness and the things going on. So all of the treatments in this perspective involve more than one person. They involve using groups or looking at like families or couples, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And group therapy is a very common modality here, right? Where we have a group of people together who are struggling with similar issues. And maybe it's led by like a therapist or a couple, depending on the size of the group. And the great thing about that is there's like a normalizing that occurs. Let's say you have a group of people who are all struggling with eating disorders and they meet together and one person shares a story about how last night they ate something and they didn't like compensate and get rid of it in some way. Everybody in that group knows how powerful that is because they've experienced something similar. So there's a sense of I'm not alone with this issue, and a sense of like normalizing and then camaraderie that develops. And it's often cheaper as well because you're sharing a therapist or multiple therapists. But group therapy, very common. A lot of people go to group therapy. Groups together, you talk about your issues, everyone listens and chimes in. You can also have what are called self-help groups, which are similar, but they're not led by a therapist. These are traditionally things like AA or NA or things that are led by someone who maybe has a little more like knowledge or experience in an area, but they're not a therapist. So they tend to be a little less intense in a way, like a little different. Self-help groups tend to be a little different than group therapy. But both of these can run into similar issues. Really important in group therapy to have good boundaries and rules, right? If everybody's there for a certain issue, it can sometimes get out of hand a little bit quickly. I always think of if you've ever seen the movie Blades of Glory, it's an older movie, but they're all there for like a sex addicts group therapy meeting. And then like before and after, they're all having sex in the parking lot because there's no rules. They're like, getting turned on and into each other during the therapy, and the therapists are trying to rein them in. Like those are issues you run into. You have people who are all there for one thing, it can get out of control very quickly. I have another example of that. If you've ever seen the movie Anger Management, they're all there to deal with anger, and they can get escalated and mad very quickly, and you have to like rein it in and have good rules. So I have a little clip of that. It's a great example of like a group therapy session. So I'll play it for you. It's just a couple of minutes, but I think it's a good example. The therapy, right? And everybody's kind of sharing and contributing. Someone new comes in, they introduce themselves. Right. So there's a lot of like dynamics with the group, right? People talking and sharing. You have to have a lot of boundaries, right? He tries to rein them in multiple times, right? They're all dealing with anger. So of course, anger is going to be something that we have to keep under control. But group therapy, again, very, very common, especially in this perspective where we're looking at more than one person. So if more than one person, we're going to treat more than one person together. The other two from this perspective that are even more common, or I guess two, and then there's one side one here. Family therapy and couples or marital therapy. Those are other modalities that are really common treatments from this perspective. Family therapy, right? I told you my family believed in therapy like way too much. I remember going to family therapy as a child and just hating it. It was like the adults getting up on the kids' time, right? Except for once. There was one time we were there and my parents were just complaining that our kids never clean their room. Their rooms are always messy. They never clean their room. And we were fully expecting the therapist to be on their side and ready to be all mad about it. And he was like, that's their one space in the world where they have control over. If they want to have it be messy, you need to respect that. And we're like, yes, right? Like we win. But they totally like mind ninja'd us because the second that they told us we didn't have to clean our rooms, like we cleaned our rooms, like it lost the fun. I don't know. But It's very common in family therapy that the family goes together. And if one person in a family is struggling with something, it affects everyone, right? Like if you've lived in a family, which I'm sure most of you at some point have, or lived with a group of people, one person having an issue affects everybody, right? It spills over. And that's the premise here, that we meet with everybody in the family in hopes that we can help change the family unit. Like, how is the family communicating? How are the responsibilities divided up? Are there, things that we need to change? And so family therapy is very common in this perspective. So is couples or marital therapy. It doesn't have to be people who are married, but couples therapy. And I will say that couples therapy is probably the most stigmatized type of therapy of all therapies. Like, people like, why would we bother going? It's like a last ditch effort. But a lot of people do go to couples counseling. And I can tell you, when I was trained to be a therapist, this was my favorite thing to do as a therapist. Couples counseling was wildly fascinating and slightly terrifying, because sometimes I'm like, they're going to kill each other on this phone. Like, I don't think one of them is coming back next week, because people get heated when you love someone. The passion can be good or bad, right? Like, people get passionately angry and passionately happy. So, I love doing this, but it's often people coming in to work on communication, work on responsibilities, work on different sex drives or things related to sex. This can be very, very helpful. It can also be to have people help get a divorce in an amicable way, right? People sometimes go to therapy to navigate breaking up. It isn't always to fix the relationship. Kind of depends on the goal. But really, it's a total side note, but I'll share it with you anyway. When I was practicing to be a therapist, I once worked with 3 people who were in a relationship together. So it's traditionally 2 people, but it was a trio of gay men. And it was the most fascinating therapy I think I've ever done in my life. Like, they were there because they were having jealousy issues. 2 of them were having sex with each other more than the third, and he felt left out and was causing problems, right? And it was just wildly fascinating. Like, they went on about how amazing it was for this relationship. They had so many extra hands, which was kind of the problem a little bit, right? But they were really great together, except for this one piece. They came to work on jealousy and making things a little more even. And I loved it. It was so fascinating. I've never worked with 3 people, 3 gay men in a relationship before, but it was interesting. But typically this is 2 people who are in a long-term relationship who need a little bit of help. And there's a great movie, I don't know if it's a great movie, it's a good comedy, Couples Retreat, if you've ever seen it. And I have a clip from it. It's a little montage of different couples going to therapy. And they're all comedians who play the therapist, which I think makes it even funnier. But it's a great example of what this can look like, and different therapists approach this differently. So I'll play it for you, and we can talk about it afterward. We just had a profound moment. Oh, and we're out of time. See you next week. That's not usually the case, right? But what I do love about that clip is it shows you a couple of different therapists and their different approach. All I can think of is Ozark, because when I see Bateman, right? I don't know, all I can think. I'm like, careful, the cartel's coming. Right. But I think it's a really great little montage, right? And there's a lot of questions that they're asking, or how did you meet? Or what's the best thing about your partner? And what's interesting in couples counseling is not only does it matter what they say, but it matters the nonverbal stuff as well. It matters a lot. How close do they sit to each other on the couch, right? Some of those couples, they have their arms around each other and they're right next to each other. Others have a little bit of space. The ones who said their relationship is perfect, opposite ends of the couch, right? That's telling, right? If you have a couch in the room and a chair, and one person sits on the couch and the other on the chair, it's probably an indication of some distance between them, right? So those nonverbal things matter. Are they crossing their arms? Are they turned away from each other? Or are they physically touching and closer? Right? Those things might be telling as much as the things that they say. So very common in this approach to, ask them a series of questions, have them rate different areas in their relationship on a scale of 1 to 10, and then work through some of those struggles, right? And again, I think it's a pretty funny movie because there's so many examples of this, but I love that he tells him to stop taking notes and he takes notes anyway, right? Oh, that's nice. It'd make you more comfortable. Okay, let me write that down real quick. But it's a very common modality of therapy. Any thoughts or comments or anything here before? There's one more on this slide, but any thoughts or anything? that almost a hand? You look like you were almost a hand, right? Okay. Culture sensitive therapies are really common here too. Like looking at, if you have groups of people who are maybe marginalized, very common to focus on that in therapy. So if you have somebody who's of a minority status, maybe talking about the unique issues that they're facing and how to like target and deal with those, that's something that we might do as well. But family therapy, couples therapy, and then group and self-help groups are probably the most common within this approach. One other one that's kind of a newer perspective, and it's interesting to me that this is newer because I took like multiple classes on this in college, like forever ago at this point. But it's starting to gain popularity. It's something called the developmental psychopathology perspective. Right? Developmental psychopathology is a perspective that looks at things through like a developmental framework. So what is typical for people as they age, and what are things that are like common? And are we gone beyond what's common or what hasn't? It's kind of looking at everything building together. Right, so it looks at all of these different models combined, like how does somebody's biology affect their childhood, which affects their experiences, which affects their cognitions, which can lead to where they are today. Almost like everything builds on each other, which is a very common sense way of looking at mental illness or anything, that everything's going to build to create a situation. And so from this perspective, we have these two terms, equifinality and multifinality. And they're kind of getting at this idea that there are different paths to an outcome, right? That everyone can have a different path, but end up at the same spot somehow. Or you can have different life experiences that could still end up in the same area. So someone who has equifinality, this says that a number of different developmental routes can lead to the same disorder, right? So if you look at this example over here on the right, you can have a bunch of different things happen that all lead to PTSD, for example. Right? So people can have different traumatic experiences which lead to the same disorder. Multifinality is kind of the opposite way of looking at this, that people with similar developmental histories may nevertheless have different reactions or different outcomes to those situations, right? So that trauma can lead to different things. Somebody can experience a traumatic event and develop no mental illness from it. Maybe their resiliency is enough that it doesn't affect them long-term. They deal with the trauma and they move on. Or they could develop PTSD, or they can develop depression or substance abuse or insomnia. That these are both just kind of looking at this thought that we all take different paths. And we can end up at the same spot despite having completely different, experiences, or that one experience can result in a lot of different outcomes. So from this perspective, we're kind of combining everything together. We're looking at how they all interact and combine to either create an outcome or create like a circumstance. Very, very common. This is something that is very current in a sense. Though it's been around a long time, it's just developing a lot of popularity right now. All right. Any questions, thoughts, comments, anything about these models? I have one more kind of thing for us to do today.
Well, that up a little wider, well, that's why I apologize.
This?
Make it bigger one more time.
Yeah.
That's all.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Questions, thoughts, anything on this? Whether we go with this one or not, again, in psychology, and when we're talking about mental illness, it's probably some combination of all of these models that best explain the disorder. And you'll see these models again all semester long, right? Like when we talk about depression, we'll talk about the models that best explain depression and best dictate treatment, right? And so you'll see them over and over again. But in general, when you put them all together, you get the best clinical picture. And I want to give you an opportunity to kind of apply these models a little bit. So I'm going to give this to you and you're welcome. We have a little bit of time. So if you want to get started on this and work on it now for the next like 10, 12 minutes or so, you're welcome to do that. Or if you'd rather go and work on it at home and have a little extra time, I'm fine with that as well. But this is going to be a homework assignment that is due next class. And you're going to write directly on here. And I'll collect it from you and it'll be worth 10 points. It's the second participation exercise. So what I'm going to give you, it's a case study, right? And this is something that I partially wrote and partially adapted about a young man named Mark. And so you're going to read these three paragraphs about Mark. And then on the back, you're going to apply the different models that we talked about to Mark's situation. So what I want you to do, and you can do this as bullets for each one, that's totally fine. But you're gonna think of what are some biological factors that would explain Mark's behavior. And I've given you enough nuggets in here that you can like use those to help you. Psychodynamic factors, behavioral ones, cognitive ones, humanistic, existential, and socio-cultural. So you're gonna take this little scenario and identify elements that go with each one. And think about the things that we talked about in the slides, right? So for biology, what are some of the big culprits? And can we find some of that in here, or maybe even you can kind of infer a little bit too if there's not quite enough information. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass these out, and I'll give you each one. But if you'd like to hang out for a few minutes and work on it with somebody, that's totally fine. If you want to turn one in together, I'm fine with that as well. Or you can focus on it on your own. And again, they can be bullets, that's fine as well. But what we'll do next class is we'll spend a few minutes talking about it, and then I'll collect it. And I also have passed around a sign-in sheet. I don't know if it made its way all the way around. Perfect. Make sure that you sign in every day from here on out. I won't take attendance anymore. And if you want to make any changes to your name on there, I'll update it for next week. But if your name isn't on there, you're not in the class. So make sure you check in with me. Okay, here's the link. There you go. So again, for homework, make sure you write your name, or if you work on it with somebody else, both of your names, that's fine. And then bullets, answers for each of the models. I'm gonna stop there. If you want to stay and work on it in here for the next 11 minutes, please, it's totally fine. I'll hang out and float around. And if you'd like to go, that's okay as well. So either way, I'll say, have a wonderful rest of the day, and I'll see you Wednesdays. We'll start chapter 3. And if you hang out, that's great too. Okay. Bye.
Let's do it.